Health is something for which every man naturally longs. We may say this longing for health derives indeed not only from egotistic feelings and wishes, but also from the justified longing for work. We owe thanks for our capacity to work, for the possibility of becoming effective in the world, to our health. Hence, it is that we treasure health as a quite special beneficence. Indeed, there lies in this way of thinking about health something of the highest significance for its pursuit. In a certain way, there is contained therein the secret of the particular circumstances under which health becomes at all worth pursuing. That the pursuit of health should only under certain circumstances be worthwhile might appear unusual. Our considerations today, however, should disclose that health belongs to those virtues that most readily become a reality in us, if we pursue them not for their own sake, but for another's. That this does not always happen today can be taught us if we but look out into our present surrounding world. However remarkable it may be, when speaking of the feverish pursuit of health, the feverish insistence upon health, yet it is possible today for many people to make their own observations about it. With what means, in what countless ways, do most people today press toward health? Everywhere we find a hurried pursuit of health. We may travel through regions in which old castles and ruins tell us of monks and knights who once could call strength of spirit and of body their own. Today they have fallen into decay, and replacing them in these same regions, we find sanitaria. Was there ever in any time of world evolution such a variety of special efforts to achieve health, to struggle through to health by natural ways of living, by water or air healing methods? People are sent for air and sun bath. Once an acquaintance of mine who was on his way to a sanitarium came to me during the first half of summer. It had been with much difficulty that he managed to get 4 weeks' vacation, which he planned to spend there. Of course, it seemed to be the best that could happen to a person, to stay for a time, more or less satisfying, in a sanitarium. Hence, I had no wish to explain the futility of his plan, and thus deprive him of all hope. On his return journey, he came again to me. He brought a little book along, in which was written all he was supposed to have accomplished during those 4 weeks, contemplating his organism. Again, one could not deprive him of his joy, but on the tip of one's tongue lay the question, "Do tell me, when have you been more driven, during the whole year at work, or during those 4 weeks during which you were shoved from warmth to cold, from dryness to dampness, and were scrubbed with all those brushes?" The worst part of it was that after some weeks he said to me, "This cure has helped me as little as all the others in the last 30 years. He had tried something different each summer. Whoever cared for this person could well look upon his feverish search for health in a somewhat sympathetic way. How many people today run to mesmerizers and spiritual healers? How many writings there are on harmony with the infinite and the like. In short, the feverish pursuit of health is something that lives in our time. Now, one might raise another question. Are these people actually sick? Well, of course, something is probably wrong with them, but is there a chance that they will attain health through all these things? Especially among ancient people, an age-old saying remains even today. One says so frequently that what the simple person gets from such sayings often may contain something good, but just as often it is something false. So it is with the saying, there are many illnesses, but only one state of health. This is foolish. There are as many states of health as there are human beings. For each human being his individual health. What this says is that all general standard prescriptions holding that this or that is healthy for the human being are nonsense. The very part of humanity that is overcome by the feverish pursuit of health suffers most from the general prescriptions for health. Among them are those who believe that there could be something generally tagged as health, that if one does thus and so, that it would be healthy. It is most incredible that there is no realization that a sunbase can be healthy for a person, but that this may not be applied in general. It could be quite harmful for another. Generally, this is admitted, but there is no following through in particular instances. We must make it clear to ourselves that health is a quite relative concept, something that is liable to a continuing process of change, especially for the human being, who is the most complicated being on the earth. We need but to look into spiritual science. Then shall we penetrate deeply into human nature and recognize how changeable what we call health is. In reality, one forgets almost entirely today that upon which so much value is laid in material aspects. One forgets that the human being is in the throes of development. What is meant by the human being is undergoing development? Again, it is necessary to refer to the being of man. The physical body is only a part of the human entity. This he has in common with all lifeless nature. But he has as second member the etheric or life body, which he has in common only with what is life-imbued. This member wages a continuing battle against everything that would destroy the physical body. Were the etheric body to withdraw from the physical body, in that moment the physical body would become a corpse. The third member is the astral body, which he has in common with animals, the bearer of desires and sorrow, of every feeling and representation, of joy and pain, the so-called consciousness body. The fourth part is his ego, the central point of his being, that makes of him the crown of creation. The ego transforms the three bodies through development out of the central point of the human being. Let us consider an uneducated savage, an average man, or a highly educated idealist. The savage is still slave to his passions. The average man refines his urges. He denies himself the satisfaction of certain urges and sets in their place legal concepts or higher religious ideals. That is, he remodels his astral body from out his ego. As a result, the astral body now has two members. The one still has the form that exists in the savage, but the other part has been transformed into spirit self or manas. Through impressions from art or great impressions from founders of religion, man works on his ether body and creates buddhi or life spirit. The physical body also can be transformed into atma, spirit man, if a person devotes himself to the practice of certain spiritual scientific exercises. Thus, the human being works unconsciously or consciously on his three bodies. Were we able to look far, far back into the early development of man, we would find everywhere primitive cultural conditions, simple modes of life. Everything that those early people had in the way of appliances to satisfy their spiritual and bodily needs, their way of life was simple. Everything evolves, and within evolution the human being develops himself. This is most important. Imagine as vividly as you can a primitive man who grinds his grain to flour between stones, and picture to yourself the other things surrounding this individual. Compare him with a man of more recent cultural times. What surrounds this modern person? What does he see from morning until evening? He takes in the frightful impressions of the noisy big city, of streetcars, buses, and the like. We must then understand how evolution proceeds. We must carry over the insight we gain concerning simple things into the cultural process. Goethe made the following statement: "The eye was fashioned by the light, for the light." If we had no eyes, we could not see colors or light. Whence have we eyes? Goethe also said that out of the undifferentiated organs, the light drew forth eyes. So also is the ear formed by tone, the sense of warmth by warmth. The human being is formed by that which in the whole world spreads itself around him. Just as the eyes owe their existence to the light, so do other delicate structures owe their existence to what surrounds man. The simple primitive world is a dark chamber that still holds back many organs. What light is for the undifferentiated organs out of which the eye developed itself. The environment is for primitive humanity. Things work quite differently upon man in his present mode of living. He cannot turn back to the primitive conditions of culture. Rather is it so that an ever more intense, stronger spiritual light has been effective around him that has called forth the new. We are able to realize the meaning of this transforming cultural process if we picture to ourselves how the being fares who is also subject to this influence but cannot go along with the transformation. Here we have the condition of the animals. They are differently structured from man. When we look at the animal as it appears in the physical world, we find that it has its physical body, its etheric body, and its astral body in the physical world, but it has no ego in the physical world. Hence, the animals are powerless on the physical plane to undergo transformation of the three bodies, and cannot adapt themselves to a new environment. 2 days ago, we considered wild animals in captivity. How out in the wilderness certain animals never have tuberculosis, tooth decay, etc., but do in captivity. A whole series of decadent appearances show up in captivity or under other circumstances. During the cultural process, men are continually subject to other conditions. This is the nature of culture. Otherwise, there would be no development, no history of human beings. What we observed as experiments with animals as to the effect on the physical body appears as the opposite in man. Man, because he has an ego, has the capacity of inwardly digesting the impressions that storm in upon him from our culture. He is inwardly active, first adapts his astral body to the changed conditions, and then reorganizes it. Thus, as he keeps evolving, he comes to higher cultures and always receives new impressions.